The House of Kuru, Part 2, Chapter 17. Putrakameshti, Birth of Drupada's Twins. Drupada arrived at the city gate with an enormous pride on his face, and his brother Satyajit opened and welcomed the king of Panchala himself. Satyajit garlanded the king of Panchala and ensured the citizens knew that his regency was over and that the true king had returned. King Drupada's joy knew no bounds. He had acquired the very sages whose lineages trace back to the great sage Shringa, who had performed the Putrakameshti for Dasharatha, the father of the great King Rama of House of Raghu. He was convinced that his nemesis was already slaughtered. The king then began to dote on the two sages and provided them with the choicest meals, a move Yaja happily took up, and provided them with every creature comfort, including giving them access to his personal bedroom while he slept amongst the guest room of the palace. Tedious effort was made by the court astrologers to find the best possible date to perform the auspicious sacrifice. Drupada spared no expense in the performance of the fire sacrifice. He gathered the best priests to assist the two brothers Yaja and Upayaja, delivered the best milk to be churned to obtain the best butter, which was then heated on a low flame to obtain the best ghee to pour onto the altar of fire. A large hall was constructed for the purpose of the sacrifice, and Satyajit assisted Drupada in every way he could, and finally the auspicious date arrived. Drupada was dressed in fine silk and was seated as the ruler of the sacrifice in the center of the hall next to the fire pit, well before the sun rose on the horizon. The two great sages, shining bright like the full moon, arrived after performing their ablutions and offerings to the sun god, as was the custom of the land. Soon, the massive fire sacrifice commenced, and every other member of the house of Panchala arrived and took their respective seats near the fire altar. The sacrifice commenced with Yaja officiating the ritual, while his brother assisted him in chanting of sacred spells and incantations to raise fire from the altar, and the remaining priests assisted by chanting the hymns and the sacred mantras of the Veda. The sacrifice went on for several days, and the austerity of both the king of Panchala and the brothers Yaja and Upayaja did not waver. Taking breaks only for nature calls, food, and a little bit of sleep, the mighty cart warrior King Drupada kept pouring clarified butter, ghee, into the fire pit as the brothers chanted the sacred mantras. Tirelessly, the trio performed the fire sacrifice known as the Putrakameshti, and finally, after 18 days of performing the sacrifice, a large lump of clarified butter, crimson red in color, arose from the center of the sacrificial altar. Using a large wooden ladle, the high-souled sage Yaja took the butter and offered it to the wife of Drupada, Yajnaseni. "Here you go, fair maiden. This is the clarified butter which has been thickened by the force of the mantras. Eat this butter and you will conceive with twins," said the sage Yaja. But Yajnaseni, the wife of Drupada, was reluctant. "Dear sage, my mouth has saffron, and I am drenched in the smell of perfumes. Bear with me for just a moment while I make myself more presentable for the oblation," said the Yajnaseni. "This cannot wait. If you do not consume the clarified butter immediately, all our efforts will go to waste," said Upayaja. "Drop the clarified butter into the fire. Do it now," said Upayaja to Drupada, and Drupada looked confused. "Do not waste time. Drop the butter into the fire pit," instructed Yaja, and Drupada took the offering and poured the crimson red clarified butter into the fire, and a large flame engulfed the entire altar. The flame rose higher and higher as the people seated near the altar began to get nervous. Yaja assured them that the fire will not harm them, for it was purified by the mantras and incantations. The flames then began to take the form that coalesced together to form a young man dressed in crimson red mail and red loins, holding a red sword and a large red bow and arrow with a quiver full of red arrows. The man had a large diadem on his forehead, and he stepped out of the fire altar as there were wisps of ember sparkling on the fire altar. He walked out of the altar and bowed before the mighty king of Panchala. King Drupada and his brother cheered in happiness when a large voice was heard from the heavens. This prince has been born for the destruction of the high-souled Brahmana known as Drona. He will bring great fame and repute to the house of Panchala. And everyone in the great hall cheered and roared with acceptance. Then the embers began to roar once more from the fire pit, and another great flame shot up and engulfed the hall. This time the flames began to separate from each other, and a large hole was created in the center of the flames. Inside this hole, a woman of exquisite beauty formed. She had large black eyes as big as the petals of a lotus. Her hair was jet black and curly and had dough-like wheatish complexion. Her fingernails were perfectly rounded like convex ovals, with a bronze shine on the nails. She sported large bosoms, and a waft of blue lotus fragrance followed her for up to 2 miles, anywhere she went. Her beauty rivaled damsels in heaven, and dressed in blood-red sari, she approached the King Drupada and bowed before him as he blessed her with tears in his eyes. A loud voice was then heard from the heavens. This beautiful woman, best of all women, will bring great calamity to the house of Kuru and destruction to many houses of the warrior class of men. This slender-waisted woman will do the work of gods and bring great repute to the house of Panchala. She will wed the mighty armed Arjuna, and her betrothal will bring great fame to the entire land of Bharata, thundered the voice. And all the members of the house of Panchala roared in cheers and said in unison, "So be it," as all the priests and the 2 sages assembled across the king and said, "We will need to name the children. The firstborn, as he was born with a red mail and weapons, we will call him DYUMNA. The second-born, for her dark and wheatish complexion, will be called Krishna. And as she is born of the land of Panchala, we will also refer to her as Panchali. Being the daughter of Drupada, she will be known as Draupadi by those who wish to call her that," said the priests. And the sages Yaja and Upayaja performed the naming ceremony in accordance to the wishes of the priests, and King Drupada swelled with enormous pride in his heart. The king ensured everyone who was involved with the sacrifice were well satisfied with costly gifts and expensive silken robes for all the priests. Yaja was given 100,000 dravina and 10,000 cows as agreed, and Yaja gave almost everything to the poor, keeping only what he needed, surprising the king of Panchala. DYUMNA was introduced to everyone in the court, and Panchali was treated like a queen by all the royalty of the Panchala kingdom. Wow, so it is true then. The legendary Putrakameshti Yaga was indeed performed, asked Janamejaya. Yes, your majesty. This sacrifice, so complex in nature that it has only been performed a handful of times, the most famous was the birth of Lord Rama of Ayodhya, performed by Rishi Ashringa. And the next most notable time was the seed through which your step-grandmother, the goddess-like being known as Panchali, was born, said Vaishampayana, as Janamejaya had his jaw dropped in awe. Despite his love for wealth, I noted that Yaja gave it all away. I'm confused, Guru, said Janamejaya. Yaja merely desired satisfaction over wealth, and as soon as he obtained it, he lost the desire for wealth, said Vaishampayana. Listen, Prince, as I will now tell you the wondrous tale of the scion of the lion throne, continued the Guru as Janamejaya leaned on with an eager desire to hear more.